Good day guys and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ijoma. In today's tutorial, I'll be learning how to sew a 6 pieces gown, and I'll be using this Ankara fabric for the gown. As you can see, I'm cutting a gown, so I folded the horizontal part so that I'll be able to get the desired length that I'll be using for this fabric. So if you're measuring a skirt, it is the same thing as measuring a gown. The only difference is that for a skirt, you will just subtract your 1.5 inch for band or 2 inches. You will just subtract that. Then you measure your waist to hip, your waist to knee, and the full length of your skirt. But for this one, we are cutting a gown, so I'll be subtracting the half length of my gown. Her half length is 18, but I subtracted 17 because I'm using the 1 inch as, let me call it, a control, so that maybe after joining I can trim out some parts to make all other parts equal. So from the center of the fold, I'll measure 8 inches. I want my center front to be 16 inches wide. Then remember that this is on fold, so I'll divide the 16 by 2, and that will give me 8. The next thing I'll do is to place my half length at the top. That is 17. Remember it is 18, but I made it 17 because I'll still trim out some parts. So from there, I'll take my vertical measurements. From my shoulder to my hip is 28. 29. She's a tall person. Then from the shoulder to the knee is 37. I would have made it 38 or 39, but she's an elderly person, so that she can walk freely, I made it 37. Then the full length of the gown is 64. So this is the 62 points. I'll mark the 62, and from there I'll add extra 2 inches allowance. Sorry, the full length of the gown is 62, then I added 2 inches allowance. So the next thing I will do is to rule out this line. I'll rule my allowance line because that will be my full length for this cut. I'll rule my allowance line. I will rule my the full length. I'll rule the knee length and the hip length. I don't have to mark the waist measurement because I know the waist already. The waist is the edge of the fabric. So for a 6 pieces gown, you need to cut out your center front first. So how we do it is that we'll divide our bust span by 2. Let me say your nipple to nipple is 8, and when you divide it by 2 you will get 4. That means you use that 4 exactly, but for her, she's 9. Her nipple to nipple is 9 divided by 2, it's 4.5. You will mark that 4.5 exactly. Don't add any other allowance. So that the reason why I said this is that so that your center line will align with the bust line on the bustier. I don't know if you understand. Then you mark your 4.5 on the waist, on the hip, and when it comes to the knee, to give it a defined shape, we'll mark 4 inches exactly. That means you have subtracted ½ inch from what you marked at the hip line and the waistline. I marked 4.5 at the hip line and the waistline. Then I will mark 4 on the knee line, so as to give our 6 pieces a defined shape. I'll go ahead and join all these markings. I'll join from the waist measurement for what I marked at the waist to the hip, and from there I'll join to my knee measurement. If you notice, this particular line will be a bit slanted. Then from that point, I'll go ahead and mark a sharp line to connect to the edge of where I measured that it exactly. Mark it this way to look like a triangle from the knee length. So this is our center front. So go ahead and cut it out. You cut exactly on the line. Don't add any allowance since we are doing a freehand cutting. So I'll go ahead and fold out my fabric to cut the side part. Make sure that you minimize the waste of fabric, because most times 6 pieces dresses consumes a lot of fabric. So I folded my dress. I folded my fabric. When you fold, please ensure to measure the fabric and make sure that it will be enough to cut out the hip side. So I'll place my center front on top of the folding that I have made. As you can see, I'll place it to be at the same length with the down part of my dress. So remember, we'll be joining the sides of the center with the side pieces. You know, the center is on fold. When you open it, it will have 2 sides. So the side pieces of the 6 pieces, you will join them to the side of the center front. So in order to make sure that the sides align, you cut exactly what you have at the side of the center front on the side pieces. I don't know how to explain it better. Just cut exactly the way it is at the sides of the center front, like I'm doing right now. As you can see, I've cut the side of the side pieces with the side of the center front, so that I'll make sure that when I join, all of them will be equal. None will be longer than the other. So to the remaining thing now is to take our body measurements. I'm still making sure that they are equal. So don't just measure the side of the side piece, just cut it out to the side of the center front. So I'll place my center front back the way I placed it before. So there are 2 methods of taking your full body measurements. The one that I'll be using is that I will subtract my center front. Remember that we have cut our center front and we used 4.5 at the waistline and at the hip line. So I'll go ahead and take my measurements. I'll place 4.5. I'll subtract 4.5 and then take my waist measurement. The waist measurement is 41. 41 divided by 2 is 10.5. 10.5 plus 2 inches, because I will be adding 2 inches as my allowance. That is 12.5. I'll mark 12.5. So at the hip side, I'll try to remark my hip and my knee measurement so that I will know where to take my measurements from. So at the hip line, I'll place 4.5. I'll subtract 4.5 for the center front. My hip is 48. The hip measurement is 48. 48 divided by 2 divided by 4 is 12. 12 plus extra 2 inches is 14. I'll mark 14. Though I marked extra in case So at the knee measurement, I'll subtract 4. Remember, we used 4 at the knee measurement for the center front. So you subtract that 4 and then mark your hip measurement exactly. The hip divided by 4 is 12.5. Sorry, yeah, 12.5. 12, but I added extra half inch in case. I'm just placing this measurement in case. So I'll connect my lines from the knee to the hip and from the hip to the waist. If you want to get a curvy 6 pieces, at the knee measurement, just divide your hip by 4 and mark exactly what you got there. Don't add any other allowance to it. Then from the knee line, I will mark my slant. I'll mark my A shape for the side part. And this is it for the side measurement of our 6 pieces. For the full body measurement of our 6 pieces, I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'll finish cutting it out. I'll go ahead and slant the side. I don't want it to be this sharp or pointy. I'll just slant it with like by 2 inches or 3 inches if you want. So I slanted it a bit so that it will give me a canoe shape after joining them. So this is it for the side piece. So I'll go ahead. The side piece for the back will be exactly the same thing with the side piece for the front. You don't have to measure anything. Just fold out your fabric and place and cut exactly what you have at the front. The only difference with the front and the back is that the center back will have zipper allowance. That's just the difference with the front and the back. As you can see, I've finished cutting my center piece and the side piece. Let me show you another method of measurement. If you place this thing this way and we take your measurement, you will see that you still get the same thing that we got before. Like if you place center front this way and measure, you get exactly the same thing. I'll place my tape rule. Our waist is 4, so 1 divided by 2 is 10.5 plus extra 2 inches, you get 12.5. If you place your tape rule, you get exactly the same thing that we got. Then at the hip side, her hip is 49, 48 and a half divided by 2, 48 divided by 2 is 12 plus extra 2 inches, you get 14. Remember I said I added 2.5 inch for allowance in case. Then the same thing at the knee. You will notice that they are the same thing, so you can take your body measurements either way. Either you place the center front and cut, or you subtract the center front and cut. So I'll fold out another piece. This one I'm going to use it to cut my center back. I'll cut my center back first before I'll cut the side pieces. So I'll place the center front this way. I'm trying to arrange it. You shift it and make sure that you have about 4 or 5 inches allowance at the folded side. As you can see, this is the middle point and I have like extra 5 or 4 inches at the back. This will accommodate your zipper allowance and your tail if you want to add a bit tail at the back. No, for this one she doesn't need a tail, so I do not add a tail. So from there I'll mark to 2 inches from my zipper allowance. I'll mark to 2 inches down. I like using 2 inches so that after turning I'll have extra. So I'll go ahead and roll the line. Then from that point you will make a slant. You will make an A-shaped line that will reach the full length of the center front. You just make a slant. This can serve as your tail if you want. So I'll just add a little bit tail to it just to give it a defined shape, that's all. So from the edge of the center front I'll curve it down to where my slant ended. This is just the difference between the center front and the center back. You will notice that the center back will have an opening that will accommodate our zipper. So you go ahead and cut. The other side, you don't have to measure anything. You just cut exactly what you have at the center front on the center back. So that you make sure that all your joinings will be equal. So I'll cut out that part. Then for the center part, for the middle of the center, I don't know how to explain. For the zipper part, you will cut it open. It will not be unfold like the center front. Make sure that they are equal at the waist. So as you can see, we have gotten our center back. Very simple. So that is the center front and this is the center back. If I open it up, you will see that it has an opening. That's just the difference between the two. So we'll keep it aside and cut the remaining side pieces for the back. So you just fold. This one is very simple. Just fold out the fabric and then place the side piece, the front side pieces on it and cut out exactly. You don't have to add or subtract anything. Just cut it out the same way you cut the side pieces for the front. Make sure that they have the same length, the same everything. Now I'll go ahead and cut. So after cutting out, you see that the side pieces are the same. So I'll open up what we have cut so that it will be easy for you to relate. So after cutting your 6 pieces, you will get something like this. I've placed my center front and I've placed my side pieces. So this is how it will look. You have your hip curved out, you have your knee curved out and everything. Please, when you after cutting, you cut out your lining and add your ST to it so that it will be very firm. Thank you guys and subscribe. Bye.